Hi everyone, I'm Angela from Quick 10 News. In just 10 minutes, we deliver the most essential global headlines, business, tech, and politics. Straight facts, no distractions. Subscribe now and stay ahead with clarity. News 1. Carbon done right expands private placement financing. Carbon credit market trends. As global pressure for net zero emissions intensifies, corporate demand for carbon credits is rising. The company focuses on afforestation projects, aligning with the European Union and North American countries' policy preferences for nature-based solutions. However, market volatility risks, such as declining carbon prices and regulatory changes, should be considered. Strategic intent of financing expansion. A non-brokered private placement suggests strong support from existing shareholders or specific institutional investors, potentially accelerating project development. However, the clarity of fund allocation should be monitored, such as project geographic distribution, lower costs in developing countries, but higher political risks, and the credibility of carbon credit verification bodies, e.g., Verra or Gold Standard. Potential controversies. Nature-based carbon sinks are prone to greenwashing concerns, such as whether the afforestation sites were originally forested or if carbon credit calculations are overestimated. If the company lacks transparency, it may face resistance from environmental groups. Conclusion: short-term positive for stock prices, but long-term performance depends on carbon market regulations and project effectiveness. News 2. Russia-Ukraine war reaches day 1087. Key events. Impact of stalemate. Entering its fourth year, both sides face manpower and ammunition shortages. Ukraine relies on Western aid to sustain its front line, but Western voter fatigue, especially in a US election year, may reduce support. Meanwhile, Russia is waging a war of attrition to wear down its opponent. Geoeconomic implications. The breakdown of the Black Sea grain deal continues to push up global wheat prices, exacerbating inflationary pressures in emerging markets. Meanwhile, Europe is accelerating its energy transition, e.g., LNG infrastructure expansion, but transition costs are still borne by businesses and households. Global order fractures. Southern Hemisphere nations, e.g., India, Brazil, refuse to sanction Russia, reflecting trends toward de-dollarization and multipolarity. Prolonged warfare is likely to deepen strategic divisions between the Global South and the Western Bloc. Conclusion: with no clear path to peace, the war will continue to shape energy markets, food security, and geopolitical alliances. News 3. Indonesian migrants deported from Malaysia. Structural issues in Southeast Asian labor migration. Malaysia relies on foreign workers for 3D jobs, dirty, dangerous, and difficult, but its policies oscillate between labor force openness and domestic job protection. This mass deportation may be more of a political gesture to appease local voters rather than a long-term solution. Human rights concerns. Some NGOs have accused Malaysia of poor detention center conditions and lack of transparency. If the Indonesian government responds strongly, e.g., suspending labor export agreements, Malaysia's construction and plantation sectors could face labor shortages. Regional cooperation weaknesses. This event highlights ASEAN's weak coordination on cross-border labor issues and the lack of unified labor protection standards. Countries like China, or those in the Middle East, may take advantage of the situation to attract skilled labor. Conclusion: while addressing short-term political pressure, long-term solutions require institutionalized labor rights agreements. News 4. African Union Summit overshadowed by Congo conflict. Escalating crisis in Congo. M23 rebels, reportedly backed by Rwanda, have seized key eastern strongholds, likely aiming for control of coltan and tantalum mines, critical for electronics production. If the conflict worsens, it could disrupt global supply chains and increase operational risks for Chinese mining companies in the region. Limitations of the African Union. The AU has long been constrained by financial issues and internal political divisions, e.g., pro-Western versus pro-China or Russia factions. The Congolese president's decision to skip the summit suggests frustration with regional mediation and a possible shift towards the East African Community, or UN peacekeeping forces. A battleground for major powers. China is expanding its influence through mining investments, Russia through Wagner mercenaries, even after restructuring, and the US through humanitarian aid. The AU's ability to lead is further diminished. Conclusion: the conflict could spill over into neighboring countries, e.g., Uganda, Tanzania, turning the region into a proxy battleground for global powers. News 5. One Main Capital Quarterly Fund Report. Performance interpretation. The fund reported a -2.8% return in Q4, but a +8.2% return for the year. The negative Q4 performance may be due to concentrated holdings in tech giants, which were affected by a year-end market correction. This highlights the volatility risks for actively managed funds during the late stages of an interest rate hike cycle. Strategic signals. If the report mentions increased cash holdings or defensive assets, it suggests concerns about a 2025 economic soft landing. Conversely, if it notes bottom fishing in small and mid-cap growth stocks, it indicates a bet on an earlier Fed rate cut. Investors should compare holdings changes with broader market sentiment. Industry outlook insights. If the fund reduced exposure to China, responding to geopolitical risks, and increased investments in India or Mexico, capitalizing on nearshoring trends, it could indicate institutional capital flows. However, caution is needed against misjudging economic cycles. Conclusion: active funds must demonstrate superior stock selection performance, otherwise, they risk capital outflows to passive ETFs. Global observations and interconnections. Geopolitical risks dominate markets. The Russia-Ukraine war and Congo conflict are driving resource price volatility. Carbon credits, News 1, and minerals, News 4, are becoming both safe haven and speculative assets. Rising global South influence, the Indonesian deportation issue, News 3, and African Union struggles, News 4, highlight how global South nations seek autonomy while grappling with internal challenges. Capital reallocation trends. Private carbon credit financing, News 1, and fund hedging strategies, News 5, reflect investors' search for a balance between climate-driven investments and geopolitical uncertainties. Guess what the headlines will be in tomorrow's 10 minutes. Subscribe now, and you'll be the first to know. I'm Angela, see you tomorrow.